I uncovered a secret message from my father that made me question everything. My father was never the kind of man who left things unsaid. He was straightforward, direct, sometimes brutally so. I grew up with him in my life, a constant presence, like the foundation of a house that never shifts. His work was his passion, a successful career in law that had him away from home more often than not. But when he was around, everything felt stable. He was always there for me. And when I looked up at him, I never questioned his decisions, his integrity, or his motives. I just trusted him. That all changed when he passed away. It was sudden. One of those moments when you're blindsided by something you never saw coming. He'd been in perfect health, or so I thought. A heart attack, they said. No warning. Just like that, the man who had been the anchor of our family was gone. And in the wake of that loss, I found myself alone in ways I never expected. My mother was gone years before, and I had no siblings, just me navigating life with nothing but memories and unanswered questions. I was 26 when it happened, old enough to understand that life didn't wait for anyone, but still young enough to feel lost. It wasn't until a year after his death that I uncovered the letter. It wasn't the sort of thing you expect to find in the average estate cleanup. I was going through old boxes in the attic of our house, trying to sort through the mess left behind. There were piles of old books, records from his law firm, legal files that I had no interest in reading. Most of it seemed like paperwork that could be easily discarded, nothing that seemed important. But then, buried underneath a stack of old journals and leather-bound books, I found it. It wasn't an envelope or a folder. It was a small, leather-bound notebook, the kind that someone might use to jot down ideas. I remember it clearly. The cover was worn from years of use, the edges frayed like it had been carried everywhere. My father's initials were embossed on the front, R.W., just as I remembered from the many things he had marked with those letters. It wasn't unusual to find a personal item like that, but something in my gut told me this wasn't just another insignificant possession. I opened it, my hands trembling with anticipation, unsure of what I was about to find. The first few pages were filled with notes, none of which made any sense to me. The handwriting was neat, methodical, but the words didn't form any coherent thoughts. It looked like fragments of a larger puzzle. Names, numbers, places I didn't recognize. But then, near the middle of the book, something caught my eye, a folded piece of paper, carefully inserted between the pages. It was yellowed with age, the ink slightly faded but still legible. I unfolded it slowly, almost afraid of what it might say. It was a letter, and as I read the first few lines, the world around me seemed to freeze. "To my dearest daughter," it began, "if you are reading this, then I fear it means my worst fears have come true. There is something I need to tell you, something that you cannot know until the time is ripe. But the time is fast approaching, and you must be prepared." My heart raced as I read further, my mind struggling to keep up with the implications. What was this? Why was my father writing this? Why did he think it was important enough to leave for me? His words were cryptic, and the more I read, the deeper the confusion grew. I have made many decisions in my life, some of which you will never fully understand. There are things I have done, choices I've made, that I hope you will forgive me for. But know this, my daughter, everything I've done to protect you. And when the time comes, you will need to know the truth. The words on the page seemed to blur as I tried to process what I was reading. My father had always been the protector in our family. He had always told me that he would shield me from the ugly side of life, that he would never let anything hurt me. But now, I was reading these words, and it felt like everything I had ever known was being turned upside down. There is a secret that I have kept from you, and it is one that may change everything you thought you knew. It is something I cannot explain now, but you will find out soon enough. I can only hope that you will forgive me when the truth comes to light. I read that line over and over, feeling a tight knot form in my chest. A secret. What could it be? What had my father been hiding? He had always been open with me, honest, even when things were difficult. But now, I was reading something that suggested he had kept a part of himself locked away, something so significant that he felt the need to warn me in a letter written just before his death. The last sentence of the letter sent a shiver down my spine. Trust no one, not even those you think you know, and when you find the truth, be ready for it. It will change everything. I folded the letter back up and slipped it into the notebook, my mind racing. My hands were shaking as I placed the notebook back into the box, not sure what to do with it. My father's words were still ringing in my ears, the weight of them suffocating me. Trust no one. The very thought felt wrong, like something I wasn't supposed to understand, something I wasn't meant to uncover. But I had to know. What was the secret he had been hiding from me? And why did he think it was so important that I learn about it now, after he was gone? I spent the rest of the day packing the house, going over the letter again and again in my mind. I had questions, so many questions, but no answers. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about my father anymore. It was about me, about who I was and what my father had been protecting me from. His death had been sudden, but now it felt like there was something far bigger at play. Something that had been hidden from me my whole life, and I didn't know if I was ready to face it. That night I sat in front of the old box, staring at the notebook, unsure of what to do next. I had the feeling that the secret my father had been keeping from me was only the beginning. Whatever was hidden in that book, whatever truths he had buried, was about to come to light, and I had no idea what that would mean for me. The only thing I knew for certain was that I couldn't ignore it. The time had come for me to uncover the truth. The question was, could I handle what I would find? The day after I found the letter, I couldn't focus on anything else. The message from my father was constantly at the back of my mind. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the words printed on the yellowed paper, and each time I thought about them, the more questions surfaced. What was the secret? Who could I trust? What did my father think was so dangerous that he felt the need to warn me even after his death? The letter had raised more questions than it had answered. My father, a man I had always seen as a pillar of honesty and integrity, had kept something from me, a secret that could change everything. It wasn't just a small matter either. No, this was something so significant that he felt the need to leave me a final message. And he wasn't just warning me about some trivial problem. He told me to trust no one, a chilling instruction that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I knew that I couldn't rest until I understood what was going on. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I had to start somewhere. I returned to the attic that evening, determined to sift through more of my father's belongings. Perhaps there was more hidden away, more documents, journals, or anything that might give me a clue about the secret he had been hiding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that his death had been so sudden, so unexpected. Was it really just a heart attack, as they'd said, or had something else been going on behind the scenes? I pulled the boxes from the corner and began rummaging through the contents. The smell of old paper and dust filled the air as I opened each one, looking for anything that might provide a shred of evidence. But most of the boxes were filled with old legal documents, papers from his law firm, contracts, case files, and none of it seemed to relate to anything I was searching for. My frustration was growing, but I refused to give up. After what felt like hours of searching, I came across another old journal tucked in the back of one of the boxes. It was a small, black leather-bound book with no title. It looked like it had been written in only sporadically, the pages full of cryptic notes, and some of it was written in a way that didn't seem to make sense. But then, I flipped to the last few pages, and my eyes froze on the very first line I saw. The time is coming, and the truth will soon be revealed, but I need to make sure she's ready before it all comes crashing down. It was my father's handwriting. My heart began to race as I read on. The rest of the entry was vague, but there were a few names that stood out to me: Caldwell and the network. I had no idea who they were, but it didn't feel like something insignificant. There was more. The final entry in the journal read, "I've made arrangements. I've secured everything, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up. The network is too powerful, and I'm not sure how much longer I can protect her from them. If I don't make it, she'll have to know everything. She's the only one who can stop them. I stopped reading, my breath catching in my throat. I was shaking now. What was my father talking about? What did he mean by the network? Who were these people, and how did they have so much power over him? And why had he felt the need to protect me from them? I closed the journal slowly, my mind reeling. The more I read, the more it seemed like my father had been involved in something far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I had always thought he was just a lawyer, doing his work to provide for our family. But now, it was clear that there was so much more to him than I could have ever known. I stood there for a moment, the journal in my hands, trying to make sense of everything. I needed to know more. I couldn't let this go. My father had warned me, and now it was clear why. Whoever the network was, they were dangerous, and they had been in my father's life for years, possibly even controlling him. But why had he kept this from me? Why hadn't he told me sooner? I walked back downstairs and grabbed my phone, dialing the one person I knew I could trust, Olivia. I needed to talk to someone. I needed to tell her everything, even if I wasn't sure I understood it myself. As the phone rang, I paced the living room, my heart racing. "Hey Alex, what's up?" Olivia's voice was familiar, calming, but I could tell by the way she said my name that something was off. "Olivia, I need your help," I said, the words tumbling out faster than I could control. "I've been going through my father's stuff and I found something. I don't even know where to start, but it's all connected to something dangerous." "Well, okay," she replied, her tone immediately serious. "What did you find?" "I found this journal and I don't know what it means, but it talks about the network and some people named Caldwell. My father. He was involved in something, and he was hiding it from me. I don't know who to trust anymore, Olivia. And the worst part is, the journal said that if anything happened to him, I would have to stop them. He said I was the only one who could stop them." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Olivia was always the rational one, the calm voice in the storm, but even I could hear the tension in her voice now. "What do you mean, stop them? What are you talking about, Alex?" I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing thoughts. "I don't know what this is. I don't know what my dad got involved in, but it's something big. Something he was trying to keep me away from. He wrote that they were after me, and if I don't figure this out, I could be in danger. I'm scared, Olivia. I don't know who to trust." I could hear Olivia's breathing on the other end of the phone, and for a moment there was only silence. "You need to be careful, Alex. I don't know what your father was involved in, but it sounds like you're walking into something bigger than both of us. You need to find out everything you can, and you need to be smart about it." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't know what to do next, Liv. I don't know where to start, but I need answers." "I'll help you," she said softly. "We'll figure this out together. Just promise me one thing, be careful. Whoever the network is, they're not playing around." I hung up the phone, feeling a little lighter, but a deep sense of foreboding still gripped me. I wasn't in this alone. I had Olivia by my side, and together, we would figure out what had happened to my father. But even as the weight of her words lingered in my mind, I knew this was only the beginning. I had uncovered one piece of the puzzle, but now I needed to find the rest. And the more I learned, the more I realized that the truth could be darker than I ever imagined. I spent the next few days poring over everything I could find. I researched the network and the name Caldwell, but I found nothing concrete. Every lead turned cold. Every inquiry returned vague responses. It was as if the deeper I dug, the harder it became to find anything useful. It wasn't just that the information was hidden. It was as though someone had gone out of their way to erase it entirely. Late one evening, while I was sitting at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed. It was a new message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. The message was simple. "Your father wasn't just protecting you from them, he was hiding you. You are the key." I sat frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. The key? What did that even mean? The message wasn't signed, and there was no follow-up, just a sense of chilling finality. I looked at my phone screen. the words blurring as my hand shook. The text message hit me like a wave of cold water, drenching me with more questions than answers. My mind raced, my pulse quickened, and I stared at my phone screen, trying to make sense of it. "You are the key." What did that mean? Why had someone sent me this cryptic message? Who was behind it? Was it someone my father had been trying to protect me from? Or was it a new player in the dangerous game he'd been involved in? The message offered no further explanation, no contact information. Just those chilling words. I had no idea who had sent the message, but something about it felt more personal than I wanted to admit. It didn't take a genius to figure out that this was connected to the journal I'd found, to the secret my father had been hiding from me. I had uncovered the barest of threads, and now it seemed like the deeper I dug, the more tangled the web became. I sat motionless at the kitchen table, the weight of the message pressing on me. I was alone in the house now. My mother had passed away years ago, and I had no siblings to turn to. I thought about calling Olivia again, but I wasn't sure what I would say. How could I explain this? How could I tell her that my father, the man I had admired and trusted, had been hiding something so enormous, so dangerous from me? How could I explain that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie? I couldn't sit still any longer. I needed answers. I needed to find out who they were. The mysterious group my father had been involved with, the group that had been watching him and now me. My father's death hadn't been just a heart attack. That was a lie. And now I was deep in the middle of something that felt too big, too complicated to understand. I reached for the leather-bound notebook again, flipping through the pages until I found the entries that had set everything in motion. The words from my father's final journal kept swirling in my mind. "If I don't make it, she'll have to know everything. She's the only one who can stop them." The words repeated in my head like a mantra, but I still couldn't wrap my mind around them. The key. What was I the key to? And what exactly was I supposed to stop? I grabbed my laptop and started searching for any mention of the network in Caldwell. I had to know who these people were, what they wanted, and how they were connected to my father. I spent hours online, diving deeper into obscure websites, researching every lead, every name. It was clear that someone had gone to great lengths to erase any trace of the network from the public domain. But there were whispers, small, fragmented bits of information. My heart sank as I pieced them together. The network wasn't just a criminal organization. It wasn't just a group of people working behind the scenes for money or power. No, they were much more than that. They were connected to covert operations, shadowy dealings that involved politics, high-level corporate manipulation, and even government control. The more I uncovered, the more I realized just how deeply my father had been involved. He had worked for them, likely unknowingly at first, but over time he'd become more entangled in their operations. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. I found a file hidden in an online database. It was labeled Caldwell, Agent Details. The name was familiar, and I felt a sickening realization take hold. Caldwell. That was one of the names from my father's journal. This was no coincidence. I clicked on the file and a list of documents appeared on the screen, all coded, encrypted. But there were dates that lined up with my father's last years. The more I read, the more I realized that my father had been working for them for a long time, and the more I uncovered, the more dangerous it seemed. The document detailed agents under the Caldwell name, some of them involved in covert missions, others in political manipulation. But the thing that struck me most was the mention of Project X, a secretive operation involving high-ranking government officials, a covert effort to control information and people. The file was vague, but it was clear that my father had been part of it, or at least, he had been dragged into it. I read on, horrified by the depth of the operation. If my father had known the true extent of what he was involved in, I doubted he would have kept it hidden. But he had kept it hidden for a reason. I had to know more. I had to find the link between Caldwell and the network, and I had to find out why my father had become so deeply entrenched in their schemes. As the hours passed, the deeper I got into the research, the more questions I had. What had happened to my father? Why had he gone into hiding? The email he had left me said I was the key, but to what? What could I possibly have to do with all of this? I stared at the glowing screen in front of me, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. I jumped in my chair, my breath catching in my throat. Another text from the mysterious number. "Stop looking, you're getting too close." My blood ran cold. Stop looking. The message was short, but the meaning was clear. Someone knew what I was doing. Someone was watching me, and it wasn't just a vague threat, it was real. They had seen my searches. They knew I was digging into the truth. And I knew deep down that I had to stop. I couldn't go any further. But then again, I couldn't stop. I had come this far, and the truth was staring me in the face. The message was a warning, but who had sent it? Who was behind the curtain, pulling the strings, trying to silence me? Whoever they were clearly dangerous. The deeper I dug, the more I was uncovering, and the more I realized that I was caught in a game I didn't fully understand. I was on the verge of something that could shatter everything I knew about my father, about my family, about myself. But I didn't know where it would lead. I couldn't turn back. I closed my laptop with a sigh, my mind spinning with the overwhelming weight of everything I had uncovered. I thought back to the message from my father, the final line, "You are the key." I didn't know what that meant yet, but I was starting to realize that it had everything to do with what was happening now. I was the one who had to figure this out. My father had hidden this from me for years, and now it was up to me to piece everything together. As I sat there in the silence of the house, my mind racing, I knew I couldn't face this alone. I needed Olivia. I needed someone to help me understand the depths of what I was dealing with. I couldn't let fear stop me now. My father had protected me for so long, but now the truth was in my hands, and I wasn't going to let it slip away. I picked up my phone, dialing her number, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she would have some insight into what I had just uncovered. When she answered, her voice was steady as always. "Olivia, I need you to come over," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to remain calm. "I've found something big, and I need your help. This isn't just about my father anymore. It's bigger than that. It's about me, about us, and I need to know what it all means." Her voice softened. "Okay, I'm on my way." I hung up the phone and stood up, feeling the weight of the moment settle in my chest. This wasn't just some family secret I had stumbled upon. This was something far darker, and I was only beginning to understand how deep the rabbit hole went. The doorbell rang sharply, snapping me out of my thoughts. My heart was racing, my palms damp with sweat as I quickly moved toward the door. Olivia had promised to help me, and I needed her more than ever. Everything felt so chaotic, so uncertain. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much I didn't know. But one thing was clear, the truth was just out of reach, and I needed to grasp it before it slipped away. When I opened the door, Olivia stood there, her face serious, eyes searching mine. She looked concerned, but there was a calmness in her demeanor that I envied. I had never been good at keeping my emotions in check, and right now, my mind was spinning in 1,000 directions. The questions, the fears, the realization that I was in way over my head, it was all so overwhelming. "Alex, what's going on?" she asked, her voice steady, but I could hear the concern beneath it. "What did you find? You sound like you're unraveling." I stepped aside, allowing her to enter. I think my dad wasn't who I thought he was," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay composed. "I've found some things, Liv. He was hiding something from me, something dangerous." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, dangerous? You're not making sense. You said it was about the network. Who are they? What have you found?" I led her to the kitchen, where I had been sorting through my father's documents. The room still felt like a suffocating cage. The more I dug into my father's past, the more pieces of a sinister puzzle came to light. Every file, every hidden note seemed to confirm that my father had been involved in something deep, something dark. The secrets had been buried beneath layers of legal work, family business, and the life he had lived in front of me. But now they were spilling out and I couldn't stop them. I pulled the leather-bound journal from the table, and Olivia took it in her hands with a quiet reverence, flipping through the pages, scanning the cryptic entries. The name Caldwell was mentioned again and again. I could feel the weight of it, the fact that my father had been involved with people who weren't just law enforcement or criminals or even government officials. They were something else, something bigger. Olivia's eyes widened as she reached the final page, the one that spoke of the network and the ominous mention of Project X. "Your dad was involved in this," she whispered, disbelief heavy in her voice. "Alex, this is huge, but it's dangerous. We're talking about something underground, something that could destroy lives." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know. He was protecting me, but I don't understand how or why. The more I dig, the more I realize that there are people out there who don't want me to know the truth. Someone been watching me." Olivia set the journal down, meeting my gaze with intense concern. "You need to stop, Alex. You're too close to something that could destroy you. Whatever your dad was involved in, it's not worth risking your life for. I know you want answers, but what if this is bigger than both of us? What if it's a trap?" Her words were sharp, cutting through my thoughts. I knew she was right in many ways. I wasn't equipped for this. I wasn't a detective or an investigator. I didn't have the resources to go up against something as vast and dangerous as the network. But there was something inside me that wouldn't let go, something that told me this wasn't just about my father anymore. It was about me too. I had to know. I had to face whatever was lurking in the shadows, because I couldn't live in ignorance anymore. "No, Liv," I said, my voice stronger now. "I can't stop. Not now. I have to finish this. My father trusted me with this. He said I was the key. If I don't do something now, if I don't figure out what he was trying to protect me from, then I'll be living in fear forever. I need to understand who they are. Why my father hid this from me. It's the only way I'll ever be free." Olivia was silent for a long time. She was trying to make sense of everything I had just said. Finally, she sighed, looking at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "I'll help you, Alex, but we need a plan. We can't just go barging in without knowing exactly who we're up against. Whoever Caldwell and the network are, they have power. They have resources, and we don't." I nodded, swallowing hard. The gravity of what we were facing was becoming more real by the minute, but I had already made up my mind. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "We need to find out everything we can about the network, about Caldwell. We need to track down whoever was in contact with my father. We need to find out what Project X is, and why it's so important." Olivia agreed, but her expression was still full of worry. "We'll do this carefully," she said. "We'll get answers, but we have to be smart about it. If we make the wrong move, we could be putting ourselves and your father's legacy in even more danger." We spent the next few hours coming up with a plan. Olivia's experience with research and investigations would help us. She had worked as an intern at a law firm during college, and she was no stranger to piecing together clues. But as the night wore on, the more we thought about the task ahead, the more it seemed impossible. We weren't just going after a few hidden documents or answers we could find in a library. No, this was much bigger. We were diving into a dangerous world that my father had hidden from me. A world that could swallow us whole if we weren't careful. We decided to start by looking into the name Caldwell. From there, we would dig into the connections my father had made. But it wasn't as easy as it seemed. There were no easy leads. There were no obvious signs of who Caldwell really was. The deeper we went, the more everything was covered up, obfuscated, hidden under layers of bureaucracy, legal jargon, and false identities. By the time the morning light crept through the windows, I was exhausted. My fingers ached from typing and scrolling through endless documents, my eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. But there was one thing that kept me going, one small detail that had caught my attention as I was reviewing a list of documents my father had left behind. It was a name, Victor Caldwell, appearing as the CEO of a corporation called Caldwell Enterprises. But it wasn't the name itself that struck me. It was the title beneath it. Founder and leader of Project X. I could feel my heart skip a beat. This was it. This was the piece of the puzzle I had been looking for. Caldwell wasn't just some corporate magnate. He was the one behind the very project my father had been involved in. My hands trembled as I copied the information into my phone, ready to take the next step. There was no turning back now. We were in it deep, and I wasn't sure where this path would lead, but I knew one thing for certain. The truth was close. It was almost within my reach. I turned to Olivia, who had been sitting quietly by my side, lost in thought. "I think I've found something big," I said. "Victor Caldwell. He's the man behind Project X. He's the one my father was hiding from. And now it looks like he's the one I have to face." Olivia didn't speak right away. Instead, she studied me, a concerned look in her eyes. Finally, she stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city beyond. "This is it then," she said quietly, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Are you sure you're ready for this? This isn't just a family secret anymore, Alex. This is bigger than both of us." I stood up as well, my mind clearer than it had been in days. "I don't have a choice. We need to stop them before it's too late. We need to finish what my father started." And with that, I knew there was no going back. We were already in too deep. The truth had been buried for far too long, and now it was time to uncover it, no matter the cost.